want to grow in your career or you want to grow your business. That's really it. There's not a lot of people who go to LinkedIn for things aside from that. So it's very focused. Now, think about Facebook for a second. Why do you go to Facebook? Read the news, all right? So when people go to Facebook, the problem is because it's about everything, it's not about anything specific. Now, let's imagine you go to Facebook and your intent has something to do with your professional life. Right? Your goal is to connect with someone who is relevant to your professional life. So you log into Facebook, maybe the first thing you see is one of those little red notifications in the upper left-hand corner, a friend request, a message, or activity related to you. Where are you going to go? Are you going to continue down the path that you intend to go down? Or are you going to say, what's going on up here? Of course you're going to go here because it's about you. And what's more interesting than you, right? So you click on those notifications. Well, let's say that one of those notifications is a friend from high school that's tagged you in a photo. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to the photo. So you go to the photo, maybe that takes you to the friend's profile page, maybe another friend's profile page, and 3 hours later, you're on the Justin Bieber fan page and you don't know how you got there, right? So I love Facebook for certain types of businesses. I love Facebook for the social connection and for my personal life, but it just doesn't work as well as a professional networking tool because of this problem. And this is stated very well by Jeff Weiner, who's the CEO of LinkedIn. He says, LinkedIn is not a service that enables you to pass time or to take that to an extension to waste time. It's a service that enables you to save time. Really, the goal of LinkedIn is to help people connect the dots in their professional network and get work done. In short, people don't go to LinkedIn to get away from work, they go to LinkedIn to do work, right? And what that leads to is some tremendous possibilities. And here's a chart that reveals why that's true, right? When we talk about the intent of the LinkedIn user being relative to their professional life, we also have to look at who those people are. And this is one statistic that tells us who's using LinkedIn. It's the average annual earnings of different users of social media sites. On Facebook, the average earnings is $25,000, Twitter is $52,000, LinkedIn is more than $100,000. Now, this isn't a value judgment about people being better because they earn more, but it does tell us that there's a different type of user here, right? The fact of the matter is, in our society, people tend to get compensated. Sometimes it's not fair, but people tend to get compensated based on experience, based on knowledge, and based on level of responsibility. So what we can infer from this is that the LinkedIn user in general has greater levels of experience, more knowledge, more degrees of responsibility. Now, to build on this, I want to share a glimpse at the average LinkedIn user that was included in the story Fortune magazine did about LinkedIn. This was a few years ago, but it still holds true today. In this article, the author, Jesse Hempel, says the average LinkedIn user is about 43 years old, makes about $107,000 a year, college educated, and here's the kicker. About a quarter of LinkedIn's users are business decision makers, right? Senior executives. So what you're talking about is a very high concentration of people who are in a position to make decisions, to make business decisions, and they're focused on just that. They're focused on doing work. And that's what makes LinkedIn different. Now, as a result of that, some pretty incredible things can happen. Here's an example, another statistic for you. This was a study that HubSpot did about lead generation. They looked at where is it most likely that a visitor to a social media page or profile is going to be converted into a customer. Well, what this study proved, and what other studies have weeded out time and time again, is that not only is LinkedIn better at this, but it's better by a factor of 3 or 4. Now, to take the mystery out of this, it's pretty simple. You have people who are have a capacity to make business decisions, focused on work, stands to reason that more real work is going to get done. All right? So when we talk about why LinkedIn, to me this is the end game. It's the opportunity to do real work and to spend your time productively. Right? So where do we begin with this? All right? So what do you do with LinkedIn? Knowing that most of us probably want to do better quality work, want to have the opportunity to do more work, want the opportunity to connect. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some basics, but I want to really reinforce that this applies to everyone. Even those of you whose hands went up, who said you're using LinkedIn maybe somewhat effectively, I want you to rethink how you're using LinkedIn and say, am I making the most of this tool? Are there little things that I can do to tweak it get this much, so there's more opportunity available to me. For some of you, you may be starting from the ground up, but it applies either way, all right? Well, my sense is that for most LinkedIn users, there are two things you should absolutely do first. And again, if you're rebooting and looking at LinkedIn again, giving it a second look, maybe go back and look at these things again. The first thing is to complete your profile, right? To tell the story you want to tell as a professional. Go into detail on that in just a second. And the second thing is to get connected. The reason I put build your profile first, because it's kind of like moving into a new house. You wouldn't invite people over unless you have furniture on the floor and pictures on the walls. So you want to make sure that everything looks good before people start coming your way, right? Well, let's talk about this phenomenon of completing your profile. In the time we have here today, I'm not going to be able to go into depth on all the different modules that come with the profile. So I want to talk more strategically about what you should look to do with your profile on LinkedIn, right? The first thing that I really encourage you to do is to think of your profile as a case for your capabilities for the work you want to do. A lot of people treat the LinkedIn profile and their resumes as a look back. Here's a rehash of everything I've always done. I want you to think differently and say, how do I present the most relevant evidence that is future-facing for the work that I want to do? All right, and that may be a little bit different. Now, another nuance to this is thinking about LinkedIn as only relevant to your professional life. And that may include that may help determine what you include in your profile. All right? If you have volunteer work that's important to you, but it's entirely unrelated to the story you want to tell as a professional, maybe you omit that, right? Because people will absolutely go where you take them, right? If you tell someone that you're good at something and you do that over and over again, just as Eric inferred in the content management and content marketing piece, if you do that often enough, people will go there. But if you tell them 10 stories, you're going to cannibalize your message, right? So make sure that everything you say is relevant to your work. This isn't a place where we're talking about walking the dog, not a place we're talking about the music we just listened to. It is about your work. Now, the end game with this, with the profile, is to position yourself as a resource in your subject matter area. And I always say the hardest part about using LinkedIn is figuring out what you want to be when you grow up. Is figuring out what you want people to think of when they think of you. What do you want to be known for and known as? Once you know the answer to that question, it becomes pretty easy to populate your profile accordingly. But answering this question can be hard because we have complex lives. I know someone who is a psychology professor, but she's also a realtor, right? I know people who sell Mary Kay and they work as receptionists, right? What do you want to be known for? Well, you have to decide that. And it can be both. Just knowing that telling both stories is harder than telling one story consistently, right? So it's about this. This is the end game. This is where we're looking to go. Now, I want to encourage you to make your profile complete, but I don't want to overstate this by thinking you have to have 1,000 words in your summary, okay? When I talk about completion, I mean filling out all the relevant parts of the profile, but also having a balance here, being concise within those parts of the profile. A 5-sentence summary is better than a 5-paragraph summary, right? But you should have a summary. You should have a summary that tells the story you want to tell as a professional, right? So look at every single opportunity to share something on the LinkedIn profile and use it, right? If it's relevant to your goals, if it's relevant to the story you want to tell. But don't think you have to write a novel. This pains me to say as a former English major, but people just don't read as much as they used to, right? Like Eric said, they may stay with you for a 300-word blog post, but they're probably not going to stay with you for 3,000 words. So complete is important, but so is concise. And one last thing I want to mention about profiles. You may have noticed that LinkedIn profiles are changing, right? This is a glimpse at what a new LinkedIn profile looks like. You'll notice it's a lot more colorful, the photo is bigger. So the things we're talking about today are very strategic. We're not going to go into too much detail, but this is something you should expect to see when it could be today, it could be a week from now, it could be a month from now, the next time you go to LinkedIn. Know that things may look a little bit different than the last time you were there, because LinkedIn profiles are changing. And the goal here is really to keep up with the times. In a world where we have Pinterest and Instagram, LinkedIn can be kind of boring. LinkedIn's trying to be less boring. All right, now, one thing I want to mention before I get to the idea of getting connected. I don't want you to stop after you've done your profile. A lot of people create their profile and then lean back and wait for good things to happen, all right? And the profile, I will tell you, is a necessary first step. It's one foot in the door to using LinkedIn. This a prerequisite. But it is not the best way to tell your story as a professional. It's one way, but there is a better way on LinkedIn. Now, I'm going to create a little bit of a cliffhanger here and tell you that I will get to that in just a minute. But I want to talk about why I believe this to be true. I really think it's crazy to rely upon your profile as the best way to tell your story. It really is counterintuitive. There's a lot of people who will tell you, if you listen to talk about LinkedIn, they'll tell you the secret to success on LinkedIn is optimizing your profile. I don't think that's true. I think you should do your profile justice, get it done, make sure it tells the story that you want to tell, revisit it every now and then, certainly update it when an update is needed, but then let it go. Know that it's a static part of using LinkedIn that, if you've done your job, can stay static for some time. The reason I suggest that it's crazy to rely upon your profile, and when I say this, know that I'm including myself in this, is that we can be kind of lazy, all right? All of us, we can be kind of lazy. And how lazy can we be? Well, here's a slight digression. We're so lazy, we have a product called Forever Lazy that lets you change out of your pajamas into different pajamas and lay on the couch, right? This is just how lazy we've become. Now, and again, I include myself in this. But the reason I say that you have to think about this when you're considering how to tell your story as a professional, when you rely upon the profile to tell your story, you are asking the audience to do a lot of things, right? First of all, you have to pop into the audience's mind. And think of all the things you carry around up here every day. Is it likely that something is going to spontaneously pop into your mind? Maybe, maybe not. I would suggest don't rely upon chance. Right? In addition, that person then has to seek you out. Now, if your name is John Smith, easy to spell, but you may be one of 50,000 John Smiths on LinkedIn. And if your name is really hard to spell, then maybe it's hard for them to find you. And even if they do seek you out and find you, then they have to consume all the information on the profile, make sense of it, digest that to understand what you have to offer. And a lot of times what's in our profile can be a little hard to understand. Job titles aren't always descriptive. Job descriptions aren't always something that's clear. So don't rely upon this. I want to suggest there's a better way to tell your story as a professional on LinkedIn. I'll get to that in just a minute. But again, profile is a first step. It is a foot in the door. That's it. Now, let's talk about the second step, and that is getting connected. All right. First, let's talk about the logistics of getting connected. Well, there's 4 ways you can do it. You can send invitations to other people. People can invite you. It's pretty simple. But there's 2 tools that LinkedIn gives us that can accelerate the process of getting connected to as many relevant people as you can. One is the People You May Know tool. I'll show you that in just a second. And then my personal favorite, the Add Connections tool, a tool that really takes a lot of the labor out of connecting with the right people. Now, again, I mentioned the first 2 are somewhat self-explanatory, so I want to give you a look at the other 2. The People You May Know, you see in the upper right-hand corner, it also appears on the new profile. It's part of your new profile. And top of fold, you see 3 people. You click on the See More button below, and there are even more, right? And what that is LinkedIn's algorithm showing you who's on LinkedIn you may have worked with in the past, who may have gone to school with because the school name is the same, who has a number of common connections with you. In other words, people who know the same people you know. That's how LinkedIn is delivering this information to you. Now, another tool that I really like is the Add Connections tool. You find this under the Contacts Add Connections menu, right? And what this allows you to do is go out on the internet, grab your electronic address book, okay? Go grab those names from Gmail or Yahoo, etc. Thank you, Rick. Gmail, Yahoo, etc. Grab those names from your address book and match them to LinkedIn's database, right? And find matches. Who are you not connected to on LinkedIn, who's in your electronic address book that is also on LinkedIn, right? Now, there's a few steps to that, and I don't want to spend our time on that today, but you'll have my contact information, and if you run into problems, honestly, call me or email me and I'll walk you through it. It's easy to do the first time you do it, but like anything, it's not easy to do the first time you do it. Once you do it, it's easy, so I can help you through that, all right? So those are 2 tools that can help you accelerate the process of getting connected. Now, that's some of the logistics, but I want to talk about something that I really believe, and Rick and I actually had a really good conversation about this morning. He's a very smart guy. It was an argument, it was a debate. But my position is that on LinkedIn, you should avoid the temptation to connect with everyone, right? That you should really focus on quality over quantity. Who are the people that you can be to, who can be a resource to you. And really focusing on the amount of depth you can give to the relationship, not just trying to go far and wide. Now, there are some search implications, and Rick made some great points this morning. He's a very smart guy, made me think at 8 o'clock in the morning. There are some search implications to doing that, but I want to explain why I believe that quality beats quantity on LinkedIn. And it's part of a larger philosophy that I buy into somewhat, called Dunbar's number. Has anyone heard of Dunbar's number? Is this familiar to anyone? All right, the person on the screen here, Robin Dunbar, has a theory that because time and attention are finite, there are only so many people we can include in our lives and still have quality connections, quality relationships with them. And he said that the more people we add into our network, the harder it becomes to maintain a quality connection with any one of those people, right? Now, I do not want you to take this literally. Dunbar's number, depending on who you read, is somewhere between 150 and 250. This does not mean if you have 250 LinkedIn connections and someone sends you a connection request, you need to go through and say, who do I need to throw out, all right? Don't follow this strictly. But there's some wisdom in thinking about this. There's some wisdom in saying, all those connection requests I get from people I don't know, who I have no reason to know how they would be a connection to me or me to them, is it better to just let those go, or am I trying to just build a network for the sake of building a network? Another way of thinking of this, it's about connecting, not collecting, all right? Think of that as a slight difference. There is no prize when you get to 500 connections. There's no prize when you get to 1,000. So know that there's some wisdom in this. Well, one of the things that I always say is that these two steps, building a profile, making connections, are the start line, not the finish line. As I mentioned, a lot of people take these two steps, lean back and wait for good things to happen. Well, I really want to encourage you to think of these as a means to an end, not an end unto themselves. They're necessary first steps on LinkedIn. So that leads to the question, okay, what do you do after you take those steps? Well, I want to introduce what I'll call an a la carte menu of different things you can be doing on LinkedIn, all right? And knowing which of these things you should be doing is very dependent upon knowing what it is you want to accomplish and where you are in your career. If you're just emerging into a career, say you're right out of college, and you're trying to build a career in a specific industry, you may want to spend a lot of time in groups, because you can make some great industry connections, you can learn quite a bit, right? If you're more mature in your career, groups may not be as relevant to you, because you may want to spend more time with those first degree direct connections, right? People who you know from the real world, so to speak. Maybe you're trying to promote your brand, promote your business. Well, you may want to spend a lot of time with company profiles, right? Company profiles on LinkedIn are a lot more rich and robust than ever before. We'll be talking about that in the session at 11 o'clock. But this isn't something that you need to do all of these things. You need to pick the things most relevant to you. Now, again, we're limited by time today. So I want to focus on 3 of these that I think apply somewhat universally, right? Things that I think apply to all of you and that all have some value. If you do nothing else on LinkedIn, these are 3 things you can be doing that if you do them consistently and if you do them well, will provide you with a good return. And the 3 things I'm going to talk about are these: status updates, advanced search, and recommendations. I'm going to talk a little bit about endorsements, but I want to focus on recommendations. All right? Well, let's start with status updates. Remember when I said that your profile is not the best way for you to tell your story as a professional on LinkedIn? I believe the status update is much better. Right? And I call the status update the engine that drives LinkedIn. It's been my experience that people who use status updates tend to get much better results than those that don't. Right? And status updates, just to clarify what I mean here, it's the little box next to your photo, right, where LinkedIn encourages you to share an update, right? The opportunity to talk about something relevant to your professional life on LinkedIn, right? And when you do that, that status update will be populated into the news feed on the home page of your LinkedIn connections. When they log in, if you just gave a status update, just issues a status update, it will appear there. Right? Now, let me talk about why this is better than the profile. Well, first of all, they don't have to seek you out, right? You don't have to pop your mind. You're sort of imposing yourself on the conversation. You're forcing your connections to think about you because there you are in the newsfeed, right? So it takes away the problem of them thinking of you, it takes away the problem of them having to seek you out. In addition, status updates tend to be very descriptive. You know, my old writing teachers used to say, show, don't tell, right? This is a way of showing your work, giving examples of the type of work you do, instead of just telling people what you do. I think that's more powerful. Now, you can't do this once and expect to get results. You have to do it consistently over time. But collectively, those status updates, I believe, do more to tell your story as a professional than your profile may ever do, right? Because your profile, fewer people in your network are going to see them. Now, excuse me. One of the things that I want you to encourage you to think about with this is, what are some good content? What makes good content on LinkedIn, all right? And this really, I always find this funny that people say to me, okay, I understand status updates are important, but what would I ever say on LinkedIn? Who would ever care? These are some of the same people who have no compunction about telling me what they're having for breakfast on Twitter, or telling me, what music they're listening to on Facebook. Why would I ever talk about it on LinkedIn? Well, I want to give you some examples, different content buckets, if you will. And I'm not suggesting you use just one of these. Use a variety. Try different things. See what works for you and your network. One very simple one is what you're working on. Giving people a glimpse into your professional life. For example, this morning, my status update, not surprisingly, is that I am here doing this. Now, there's a little bit of a halo effect when you do that. It might sound kind of mundane on its face, but maybe if I do that often enough, people go, well, that guy must know something about LinkedIn. Maybe when I need that, I'll call him, right? It's a way of positioning yourself top of mind in your network for a certain thing, because you're reminding people of what you do. All right, so that's one example. Another is being a resource to people by sharing other people's content. Right? Maybe you read something from your industry that's great, that you think is worth other people's attention. Maybe it's industry news. Maybe it's news about your company. That's fair game. In the status update, you can include a link to something that exists on the web. So you can really use the status update to sort of encourage people to click on the link and read more. That's where that content that Eric talked about comes in. All right? So you have that opportunity. And I think today we're all so busy that we're overwhelmed by information. And what we're looking for increasingly are good filters, people who can point us to content that's deserving of our time and attention, who take some of the labor out of finding the good stuff. Be one of those people relevant to your work, and you'll start to be known as someone who knows what's going on in your industry. Another one I like is advice and opinion, simply offering up a perspective, all right? Sharing what you know freely and willingly, telling people what you think, right? Positioning yourself as a certain type of professional by doing this. One of my absolute favorites is questions. All right? As an old English major, I always say that the question mark is the most powerful character in the English language. A period tells people we're done, nothing more is needed, please go on your way. A question mark says, come on, you're invited to the conversation, right? You can't do this all the time, but think of the opportunity to maybe end a status update with a question. If the whole goal of this is networking and relationships and engagement, why not invite people to the conversation, right? All right. I also like events, sharing whether your organization is hosting an event, whether you're attending an event. I think a great LinkedIn status update would be telling people that you're here at this event, because it shows them that you're investing in yourself as a professional, you're learning new things, tells them what you're learning about, right? So maybe that sparks up a conversation with them. So events are absolutely fair game, right? My belief is that all of these tools should facilitate real-world relationships. They should get you in more rooms like this with real people, all right? And talking about the events you're attending, maybe it's a way to facilitate conversations with other people at those events. And one of my favorites, again, is jobs. Sharing job opportunities at your company or other job opportunities that you know of. I want to tell you a quick story about this. Back about a year and a half ago, my company, Asher Agency, we had an opening in our media department. We were looking for a media assistant. And our VP of Media came to me and said, can you help me get the word out? So my instinct was to go to LinkedIn and to post a status update saying, we're looking for a media assistant with Excel knowledge, good communication, and good organization skills, right? So I put it out there, and it was not an hour later that a friend of mine, Nick, from a university up north of where I work, sent me an email. He says, I know a guy. I know a kid who just graduated who would be a great fit for that position. And I said, send me his resume. Not an hour later, I got that resume, right? And it was a guy named Anthony Boyer. Well, a week later, Anthony was working in that job. How much did that cost me? It cost me $0, and it cost me maybe 20 minutes of my time to fill a position. And think of the cost that comes with recruiting. Now, LinkedIn is well known as a tool for recruiters and job seekers. That's not all it's about. But absolutely use that opportunity to share those job opportunities. You can also help your network. If you know people who are looking for work and you think they're good at what they do, share that. Tell people you know of a good candidate. If you have a customer or a client that's trying to find someone to fill a position, share that, right? We're all media today. We all have the ability to reach these networks. All right. Now, a couple of things I want to tell you to avoid with regard to status updates. Don't just sell. If all you're doing on LinkedIn is selling, whatever your product or service is, people will ignore you, they will hide you, they will disconnect from you entirely. That's not really welcome in this environment. You may get away with it occasionally, but after a while, people are going to get tired of it. They're looking for resources, people who are there to help them. So think of the opportunity to still promote what you know and promote what you have to offer without directly selling. I'll give you another example. Let's say that you're a printer, okay? And one of the things you print is brochures. You could do a LinkedIn status update that says, we print brochures. Next time you need a brochure, call us. With all due respect, who cares? Nobody cares. But what if instead you share things like, here are 10 great things to consider when designing your next brochure. Or here's a new print technique that can save you money. Or here's a digital printing technique that allows you to print low quality of a brochure with high quality, right? Low quantity of a brochure with high quality. So think of that opportunity. Think of the subtle difference between sharing information, being a resource, and selling, and try to avoid this at all costs. Now, also this one, probably obvious, but I need to say it. Don't share proprietary info. If you don't want a competitor to see it, if you don't want your customers to see it, if you don't want anyone to see it, don't share it. Right? Pretty simple. Now, I have to say this again. Everything you say in the way of LinkedIn status updates should be relevant to your work. People are there to work. They're there to connect the dots in their professional network. They don't want to hear about other things. It becomes too much noise. So make sure that you're focused on that opportunity. And then finally, people ask me, how often should I do this? How often should I share status updates? I want to give you a rule of thumb. Right? Think about doing this at least once a week. You're not going to get much traction unless you do at least that. But you don't have to do it much more than once a day. Right? I try to make it a habit to share one LinkedIn status update, one thing that I'm sharing. Sometimes I'll reshare other content, but I'm going to pick the thing that I'm working on any given day that is most interesting to my network. Maybe it's content I've created. Maybe it's something I've read. Maybe it's something I'm working on. Maybe it's an event that I'm attending. Remember that those options on different status updates, think of that as sort of a menu to choose from. Right? Once a day is plenty. One of the great things about LinkedIn that I really like is it doesn't require the same time commitment that some other social networks do. In short, you don't have to babysit it as much because people are busy. People are going on there to get things done. So your status update isn't going to be competing with as much stuff as it might on Twitter and Facebook. All right? So think of that opportunity to really stand out. Another thing I want to mention just briefly is I used to say Monday through Friday, work hours for your network is the right time to post on LinkedIn. I still believe that, but I've started to post on the weekend because what I've found is not many people are doing it, and those that are there, my status update has a pretty long shelf life. So especially if I'm teaching a course and I want to recruit people there, having it sit there for a couple hours can be really valuable. I just know it's a different type of content during the week when people are busy. All right, so think of all those as rules of thumb, but adapt accordingly based on your needs. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that I think is very much underappreciated on LinkedIn. It's advanced search. All right? Advanced search is the capability to tap into all the data LinkedIn has compiled. Remember, it has 200 million members and has data about those 200 million members. I'm old enough to remember a time when if we needed to find out the CEO of a company, we might have to call Dun & Bradstreet and pay him a bunch of money just to get that information. Today, you can find this very easily on LinkedIn. All right? Advanced search begins in the upper right-hand corner next to the search box. You see the word advanced. Click on that, you get to a field that looks something like this. You'll see here you can search by first name, last name, keyword, title, company. You can search by industry. You can even search by level of connection. Now, I'm going to give you a couple examples of different types of advanced searches. One that's pretty simple, the other one a little bit more complex. But I want to clarify what degrees of connection means. It's a pretty simple thing. Has anyone heard of 6 degrees of separation? Right? If you don't mind, tell us, what does that theory mean?
Well, actually, you're separated from any person at a maximum of 6 connections.
Absolutely.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or more separation, yeah. Yeah, and very well said. And what that means is I can get to anyone in the world. To get to anyone in the world, it's going to take me no more than 5 people to get to them. If I want to reach Nelson Mandela or Barack Obama or Kate Middleton or whoever it is, I'm going to find that connection through no more than 5 people. Right? LinkedIn works under the same premise. If I am directly connected to you on LinkedIn, you're a first-degree connection. If you are connected to the lady next to you, and I am not, she's a second-degree connection to me and a first-degree connection to her. All right? So first-degree connections are the people you're directly connected to. Second-degree connections are those your connections are connected to that you are not directly connected to.
Sort of like cousins.
Sort of like cousins. I've never thought of that. That's a really good way of thinking. I'm going to steal that and claim it as my own. Thank you. Yeah, so these are your cousins, your second-degree connections. They're really like that. Your second-degree connections are your cousins, all right? So, how can you use this information? And here's a simple example. Let's say your company was looking for a new IT person, all right? I work in Northeast Indiana, so forgive me for the zip code here, but I might go to LinkedIn and search in the title field IT, all right? I kept it as simple as possible, as few characters as I'll need, IT. All right. I also am going to click on the zip code field, and I'm going to type in the zip code in Northeast Indiana. Let's assume that I don't believe this person is going to relocate from somewhere else. They're going to come from the market in which I work, and they're probably not going to travel much more than 50 miles, so I do that drop down and say within 50 miles. Now, under connections, I'm going to click on first-degree connections. And the question I'm really asking LinkedIn here is, who do I know in Northeast Indiana that claims to work in IT? Who are those people? Right? If I did this search, it would give me these results. And top of fold here, you see Marion, Carrie, Lee, and Tim. Right? These are people who work in Northeast Indiana in the IT field. Now, this is a great opportunity because who is more likely to know where the good IT people are? Me, someone who works in marketing, or people who work in IT? So my next move at this point is to send a LinkedIn message or an email to these connections and say, does anyone know of any good IT candidates looking for work? All right, so LinkedIn allows me to search my own network in this way. And it's much more likely they're going to know someone than I ever would. And this is much better than asking the world at large, because these are people I have some level of trust with, right? These are people I know. And they're going to filter those results probably at better quality because they know me, they know my company. And it's even possible that one of them might be looking for work. Maybe I've found my match there. This is actually how I found the guy who refinanced my mortgage. Went to LinkedIn, I typed in mortgage, I typed in zip code, and one answer came up, he got the job. All right, so a way to quickly understand who's in your network. Now, this next example is a little more complex. I actually tried to make it about as complex as I could so you can understand the power of this. What if, for example, you wanted to reach people you don't know? All right, let's say my boss came to me and said, we really need to build our connections with people in logistics, in the logistics field, all right? I'm not even sure I know what logistics people do. But let's say he said we wanted to reach out to that industry. Well, I might go to LinkedIn and type in a Northeast Indiana zip code and say within 50 miles. Then I could click on logistics and supply chain industry. And here is the difference. I'm going to click on second-degree connections here. I'm going to look at my cousins, the people I don't know but who are connected to those I'm connected to. So the question I'm asking LinkedIn here is, who works in logistics and supply chain in Northeast Indiana who I'm not connected to but who knows people that I know, right? What I would get, and this fascinated me when I did this search, I get more than 80 results. 80 people I don't know in this field who I have common connections with. Now, this information on its face isn't really actionable, because if I pick up the phone and I start calling these people, we all know how much luck we get with cold calls most of the time, right? Probably not going to work all that well. But here's the genius in LinkedIn. Let's look at this Brian person, Brian Carlson. What LinkedIn tells me is that he and I have 7 connections in common. And furthermore, if I click on that, LinkedIn's going to show me who those people are. All right? It's going to tell me that Steve and Thomas and Gary are all people I know that also know Brian. So my best next move here is to pick up the phone and call Steve, Gary, or Tom and say, how do you know this person? Or what do you know about this person? Or do you think the reason I want to contact them would be of interest? Or even better, are you willing to make an introduction? Are you willing to make what would be a cold call a little warmer because they know you and trust you because they're in your network, right? And that's what LinkedIn allows you to do. It allows you to understand those intersections, make use of them, and leverage them to help you get where you want to go. All right? Now, a couple of caveats here. Don't abuse this. If I call Steve every day and say, another person you know that I don't know, he's going to stop answering the phone, all right? And I'm going to start to erode the quality of that relationship. In addition, you better believe if Steve calls me tomorrow and says, hey, remember yesterday when I helped you, today I need you to help me, you better be willing to reciprocate. So know that this is all about credits and debits, but why not take advantage of that if you can, all right? And a few other things to think about with this. One is that absolutely the stronger your network is, the more effective this becomes. If you're connected to one person on LinkedIn, advanced search isn't going to get you very far. However, it's also important to remember that this is a place to me that demonstrates the power of making sure those first degree connections are people you really know and have a relationship with. Because in that second advanced search, if the people who are the go-betweens aren't known to me, I probably can't pick up the phone or email and ask them for a favor because it's another cold call. And all I'm doing in that case is I'm muddying the waters, right? And when I mention cold calls, if you're in that business, this is a way to mitigate the degree to which you need to do cold calls. It doesn't take the problem away, but it makes it a lot easier to get around, all right? Last thing I want to talk about that I would highly recommend you do on LinkedIn, something I think is universal, is making recommendations and requesting recommendations from your connections. LinkedIn recently introduced something called endorsements. I'm not talking about endorsements, right? Endorsements look like this. They are check marks that say, yes, someone has this skill, and recommendations look more like this. Recommendations are a narrative where someone talks about why someone is good at their particular job, right? I have a small rant about endorsements in my next session at 11 o'clock. I don't really like endorsements. The fact of the matter is the genie is out of the bottle and they're here to stay. But I think endorsements are very hollow. Let me go back to this for a second. This model only requires that you click and say someone is good at something. And what's happening is everyone is endorsing everyone for everything, sort of like the Halloween candy model. Ring the bell and you get the same piece of candy as the last person. Recommendations are a lot different because they require thought. They require substance, right? And if you have even one or two recommendations on your profile, you will be standing out in a way your competitors may not be standing out to their connections and the people they know. So I would highly encourage you to seek these out, and I would highly encourage you to give them, all right? Now, people always ask me, how do I get recommendations? Well, the first step, do good work. Be really good at what you do. If you are, much more likely you're going to get recommendations. If you're not, that's okay, no shame in that, but get better at what you do first. Don't invest a lot of time in LinkedIn. Get really good at your job, then dive back into LinkedIn and start asking for recommendations, all right? So it starts with good work. One of the challenges with recommendations, one of the things that makes them more of a challenge than endorsements, is the fact that you generally have to ask for them. It's rare that a recommendation on LinkedIn falls out of the sky into your lap. You generally have to request them. There's a process for doing that. If you don't know the process, again, email me, call me, I'd be happy to walk you through it. All right? You do have to request them. There are people in your network who think you do great work, but unless you ask them to tell the world that, they probably will never do it. Right? I also want to note that timing is everything. If you are seeking a recommendation for someone who works on tax stuff, last week would not have been a good time to ask them for a recommendation. If you have clients and you owe them things, you owe them a bunch of projects, finish the projects, then ask for the recommendation. All right, so know that timing matters. Another thing I want to suggest, a great way to get recommendations on LinkedIn is to be known as someone who's willing to give them, right? To be seen as generous in giving them as you are in being willing to receive them. But I want to say this isn't a quid pro quo, it's not a this for that. And the reason I mention that is LinkedIn actually encourages you. If someone gives you a recommendation, you are then prompted to recommend the person back. And that may be warranted, but don't do it right now. Because if you do, in the newsfeed, it's going to say, Anthony recommended Joe, and right under it, Joe recommended Anthony. That looks a little more hollow than it does if it stands alone. All right, so thank the person, say, I really appreciate the recommendation. I think you're deserving of the same thing, and let me know when it would be very useful to you, and I'll do it then. It may be the next day, maybe the next week, it doesn't have to be months later, but know that there's an advantage to waiting. Now, a couple perspectives I want to share on this. One from Seth Godin. Seth Godin says this. He says that if you're going to do this stuff at all, if you're going to network at all, do the thing that matters most, helping people reach their goals, so that when the time comes, they'll be more willing to do the same for you. This isn't part about reciprocity, right? Really looking for opportunities to help people so that you have something in the credit column when you need that favor from them. But it goes beyond that. And I like this quote even more from Chris Brogan. Chris says that the service you provide by recognizing good work and giving recommendations goes well in both directions. Right? It helps the person you've given the recommendation to, for sure. It also helps you. I think most of us want to work with people who recognize and value good work. This is a way of showing people you're that type of professional. Right? So recommendations, incredibly valuable. I would say that most people today aren't doing them, so be someone who does them, gives them, and who requests them. Yes?
I've seen companies that have a policy against providing recommendations, that being an issue where we have that at our company.
Excellent point, excellent point. This is all sort of a legal morass, all this stuff we're talking about today. I've got a couple lawyer friends, and they say that the sand is moving beneath our feet with regard to social media and the law. And that extends to some degree to policies and HR departments. Very good point. The first thing you should do is check with your HR department to make sure it's okay. There are businesses that will prohibit supervisors from recommending the people who report to them. I wish that wasn't the way the world worked, but it is in some places. All right, so you have to be aware of that. In addition, even endorsements are causing problems for people. All right, there are certain industries, financial advisors and lawyers, who because of professional regulations can't accept those type of things, but they don't know how to change their LinkedIn profile to delete those, so they may be getting into trouble that way. So it's really complicated, but yeah, anything I say today is overruled by your internal policies at your company. All right, know these opportunities exist, but maybe if that's the policy, maybe you're good at giving recommendations outside of the organization. All right, maybe that's what you seek to do. Even if you can't, even if you are forbidden from getting recommendations, I don't know of any employer that's forbidden people from giving them to anyone. You may not be able to give them within your organization. All right, so you may not be able to do all of the things I'm suggesting. Know your policy and then adapt accordingly. All right. We're only able to talk about a few things because I want to leave some time for questions, but there's one last thing that I want to share with you. All right, I mentioned that LinkedIn is a tool you can use in a fairly reasonable amount of time. Right? And I want to give you an idea toward that end of using LinkedIn for 10 minutes a day. Right? Who here would say I can spare 10 minutes a day? I can find 10 minutes a day. Great. All right. Now, I'm not a quick fix person. I'm not a shortcut person. I'm not saying here's something you do for 10 minutes once and then sit back and wait for good things to happen. This is 10 minutes every day for the rest of your professional life. So it's a long-term commitment that you can devote to LinkedIn in very short chunks of time. All right, I'm going to suggest there are four things, that I encourage you to do that will take you about 1 minute each. Right? And know that this is just a suggestion and an example. I want you to dive into LinkedIn and do some things that may be relevant to you because of your goals and maybe adapt this accordingly, but this is a place to start. One of the things I absolutely recommend you do is write a status update. Share the most interesting thing you have to offer with your network that day. It could be something you're working on, something you've read, whatever it is. Right? Now, when you do that, the reason you're going to share that is because you want to communicate with people, right? You want to engage. Well, the same is true of your network. When they share something with you, they're doing that because they want to be heard. They want to know that what they said had value. So take the time to go through your news feed on LinkedIn, find a contact status update, and just click like. It will take you seconds, but it's incredibly valuable. All right, that's really meaningful to people when someone has engaged with them around something they've said. Now, I want you to take it a step further and comment on another contact status update. Maybe find two. One that really doesn't require any additional comment and one that does. If you like the first one, comment on the second one. Add to the conversation. All right, engage with that person. And the last thing I want to suggest, and this is for fun, it'll take you about 1 minute each, is looking at the who's viewed my profile module on LinkedIn. You can reverse stalk people on LinkedIn. You can't do this on Facebook. Despite what all those modules tell you that pop up on your homepage on Facebook, there's no way to know who's looked at your Facebook page, at least no easy way. Well, with LinkedIn, not only can you do that, but the default is that you can see who's looking at your profile. You can change your settings accordingly, but if you don't, you'll be able to see who's looked at your profile. And that actually has some value. Maybe you're working on recruiting a new customer. Maybe you're working on recruiting a new employee, or you're looking for a job change yourself. Sometimes knowing who's looking at your profile at a given time could encourage you to change what's on your profile, tell a slightly different story for that audience. All right? So again, don't read too much into that. Don't pick up the phone and call people and say, I saw you were looking at my profile. But just know that it exists, know that that opportunity is there. All right? Now, 3 things that'll take you about 2 minutes each. These require a little bit more time. I'm going to give you a wild card here, all right? Either choose one discussion from one of your groups, if you're in groups. If you're there, you may as well make use of them. So choose a discussion from your groups and add to it. Or if we have endorsements and we have to play the game, I'll endorse some of your connections, all right? Maybe that's how you spend those 2 minutes. Now, another one is this one I think has about as much value as any of the other actions I've mentioned. One of the things your LinkedIn connections can serve as is an inventory of sorts of people you know. One of the things I really like to do is go in every 6 to 12 months and sort of look and say, who am I connected with that I haven't talked to in a long time? Who do I want to reconnect with? And simply send them an email. Say, I saw this about your company, or I saw something about you, or I was thinking of you and thought you might have interest in this article, or better yet, why don't we go to lunch sometime, or at a real world meeting? That's one of the most valuable actions you can take because it gets right to the reason you're doing this, that direct connection. All right? And then finally, LinkedIn also has company pages, as I've mentioned, places where organizations can share their story. Go find one of your priority customers' company profile pages and stay up to date with them. Take a look at what they're saying there. All right? Now, I've thrown a lot of information at you, but I want to give you another resource to continue the conversation beyond this session. I write a blog. It's called the Link Institute, and it's just about LinkedIn stuff. It's all I talk about. If you never want to hear about LinkedIn again, you probably have no reason to go to this blog. But if you want to learn more, I share everything from little tips about how to use LinkedIn, things that are simple fixes to profiles, for example, and sometimes more strategic things about thinking broadly about using LinkedIn more effectively. You can find this at linkedinstitute.wordpress.com, all right? And very soon, I'm going to make this a lot easier. You can go to anthonygiuliano.com and it will take you right here, right? So again, if you missed that or you don't have these slides, make sure you get them, but if you missed that, you'll have my contact info as well. So this is another place, and I encourage you to connect with me. I really am passionate about this. I really want to help all of you and others understand how to make better use of this tool that has so much untapped potential. All right, and that starts really right now with any questions that you have.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Just in the past week, I've sent random emails to people through my work, just one acknowledging something that they sent me.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden they want to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I don't know, other than to have sent them an email, thanks for sending me your whatever.
Yeah.
Is it necessary to connect to those if you don't have any other connection? I mean, these are like people in mind.
Yeah. My belief is it's totally a judgment call. When I say that you should be intentional about who you connect with, I don't mean your default should always be no, but you should have a reason for doing it. The threshold I use is first, do I know this person? Do I recognize their name or face? I don't even have to know them from the real world. Maybe it's from Twitter, maybe it's from somewhere else. But if I know them, my default is usually yes, unless I think adding them is going to ding my reputation. That doesn't happen very often, but it could. All right, so if I know them, generally I add them. If I don't, the question I ask is, based on name and title, do I think this person can be a resource to me, or do I think I can be a resource to them? Better yet, have they explained that in the connection request? Have they told me why they want to connect? If they do, almost always I say yes, but if they don't, a lot of times I say no. So it's completely a judgment call. There is no blueprint for doing this. If you are in sales, a lot of people you don't know who wish to connect with you in your industry are probably good connections if they're from companies you could sell products to. If you're me and you want to focus on those first 3 connections and add a lot of value to those people, adding new connections doesn't help me do that, so I have to be careful about who I add. So always a judgment call. Yes. One of the things to mention just on the back of that comment, LinkedIn's kind of blowing up right now. 2 people are joining LinkedIn every second. In the hour that we've been here, that means about 7,000 people have joined LinkedIn. So, and people are using it as a default, almost as an address book. You don't have to do that, but know that others may. There's a question here.
How do you spell your last name?
Here's the address, the email address. It's Juliano, kind of just like it sounds, but not Giuliani. It's a J, not a G. Yes.
Do you suggest having your email on the contact info or keeping it strictly just on LinkedIn?
Email on the contact info, keeping it just on LinkedIn. I would, if you're going to be there, make it easy for people to find you. Give them your email address. I even put my cell phone number out there. I can always ignore it if I don't recognize the number. But yeah, I tend to share as much as I can. My profile is public. If you go, you're going to see a lot of things my connections will see. And know that if people email you through LinkedIn, it's going to go, unless you change your settings accordingly, it will go to whatever your default email address is. By virtue of doing that, they will have your email address, right? If they go to reply to you in Gmail, they can reply directly to the email address that's associated with LinkedIn, all right? So if you're trying to hide it, it may be more difficult to do that than you want. Other questions or comments? All right, you guys are great. Thank you.